Good morning. Welcome you all. That was a great session from Rick. And what we learned from that, my view, is that in order to pursue customer obsession, you have to do a number of different things. But one of the key things that you must look at is how do you enable your contact centers to deliver better service. And as you think about your contact centers, what is it about that contact center that you can help improve the most? And what will make the biggest impact on your customer experience? So what I'm going to cover today is a view, and I'll take you on a small journey to look at where the contact centers of tomorrow are headed. What's the likely place where we can, as a community, as a group, focus our attention with technology and techniques to improve the performance of those contact centers in order to deliver better customer experience, and that's the goal. So let's imagine the task of an agent today. I'm not sure if most of you agree with this or not, but my view, and I think generally the industry's perspective on this, is that the job of the contact center agent is getting harder and harder for a variety of reasons. They are struggling with the nature of questions that customers are coming up with, and that's for, again, a lot of different reasons, including the economic environment, including the fact that customers are dealing with a lot more self-service experiences before they get to the agent, and therefore they already have simple stuff sorted out, so that the difficulty of questions is much more. Of course, given that customers have already spent time trying to sort things out on their own, they are in a somewhat difficult frame of mind, right? They expect things to be solved and they haven't been able to get it done. The know-how that agents are dealing with, these contact center agents, I want us to get into that mindset, right? You've been trained for a few months and you're getting customer contacts, questions. The complexity of questions you're solving now has gone up a lot more because products and services have become more complex. Most companies are selling service-oriented offers now, meaning a rental experience. It's not a transactional experience. And that means you now have to worry about a lot more history of the customer. You have to take into account a lot more before you respond to a customer question. So that know-how is becoming more complex. Compliance, obviously, is a constant trend. That keeps going up because regulation, rules, they are important and they become more and more over time. Rarely have you found a place, well, sometimes it happens, but rarely do you see the occasion where compliance goes down, right? And it impacts the job of the agent a lot because they are the ones who are your brand, your face in front of the customer. The quality expectations, as always, are high. And then finally, productivity pressures are on, right? We're all trying to do more with less. So it's a very difficult environment. The boiling frog is not too far from the truth. So with that agent seat, now in comes the new contact center agent persona, right? A younger person, perhaps. Someone who is very much living a digital life. Someone who's not used to reading a lot, is just used to looking up, used to being in the middle of lots of digital environment, like applications, mobile, social, where you don't need to look up things. You're guided mostly. You rarely read up things, right? Nowadays, you're hearing that even search has gone into more of a video search, right? And in the TikTok world now, we read that the younger folks are doing more searching on TikTok than they're doing on Google in the US. So less and less reading, less and less training, less and less structured learning, but more and more experiential, more and more guidance. And this persona then is also used to an environment where work is not necessarily a lifetime commitment to one organization. Right? You may be doing multiple things. You may be in and out of roles. So that flexibility is something that new contact center agents expect now. And then finally, they would like to do purposeful work, which is a good thing. We all want to do purposeful work. But in the contact center, that's not easy because the environment is high pressure and there's a lot of churn. So you need to get things done on time. There's always that next contact that you have to deal with. Purpose sort of gets tossed out of the window. So with that sort of a contact center agent persona, you look at the workplace. I'm just trying to build a picture here for us, right? Where are we with the contact centers? Now, the part that has completely changed in the last few years is that the workplace has become hybrid. In most cases in contact centers, more virtual than in person. And that means you as a contact center leader, as a customer service leader, are dealing with people who rarely meet face-to-face. All your interactions are online. All your conversations are virtual. And that implies your connection, your loyalty to the company goes down. It also means that it's harder to train people. It also implies that the experience that your contact center agents are delivering to your customers is only known through quality assurance and recording and feedback. So it's a very disembodied sort of environment that contact centers are in now. And put all that in one kind of pot, and let's see the challenge here. The challenge is that companies are struggling. I believe most of your organizations are challenged by the fact that attrition has gone up and recruitment is not easy. So there is an agent crisis that we are all dealing with. That's the current state of contact centers, and that's something that we all see. So how is this going to move forward? What's the likely way to solve this problem? And I don't mean to solve it perfectly, but to solve it significantly, so that it is more of a virtuous kind of environment where the problems you solve make everything better. Whereas today, it feels like we are sort of running in quicksand. So let's look at the past. Let's go down a few minutes of when and how contact centers or call centers started, and what does that mean, and look at the assumptions that we made at that time, this industry made at that time. The number one assumption that was made, this was maybe over 50 years ago, early 70s, in a call center, the assumption was that people who are going to staff the call center, the agents, it's not going to be easy to train them perfectly on all the know-how that they need to have so that they can answer any sort of conversation question that comes from the customer. So with that assumption, if you think of that, the next step you have to take is to narrow down the amount of know-how that each agent or category of agent could have in their head. And that implies now that you have to do a lot of training, because people need to have that know-how in their head at the time of the conversation, the moment of truth. So narrow down, have specialized training for different kinds of questions, create different levels in the contact center, level 1 and level 2. Level 1 takes the easy ones, they get escalated to level 2. So all those things that you all today see, or we all deal with today, and that implies a lot of technology that gets added to make it work at scale. So beyond the training and retraining, beyond the fact that now you have to do routing, which is intelligent, so it goes to the right specialized agent at the right time, availability, workforce scheduling, workforce optimization. All these capabilities have sprung up as a result of that one fundamental assumption, which is an agent cannot answer all sorts of queries himself or herself. So that capability constraint is something that we think could be challenged in this world. And to us, the current environment of the contact center is very much like a bad machine. Like, it's not a very efficient machine, right? It's what we call a class 3 lever, which, going back to our school days, as a fishing is a good example, right? It takes a lot of effort because the lever itself is not very efficient. And that's what it feels like when you're looking at contact centers today. We are working with assumptions that have been established a long time ago and mostly true, but let's challenge them a little bit. And so I love this quote, because what this says is it's not as much about solving the problem well, of course you want to, but it's more about solving the right problem. And the right problem, in our opinion, is to challenge that notion, to say that agents cannot have all the know-how necessary to answer all sorts of inquiries. What if we challenged it? What if we were able to solve that problem? What would that do to your contact center? What would that do to the work environment that you have for your agents? So now you don't have to do a lot of training. You don't have a workforce where you are creating sort of boring work because you have a lot of job enrichment. People are dealing with a lot of different kinds of issues as an agent, so it's more rewarding. And that reduces all the pressure around organizing your teams into small groups, all the challenges around routing, all the challenges around workforce optimization, hiring. All of those things become easier, not perfect, but easier. And we believe that if we do that, if you do that, and we are seeing, by the way, this is not something we are coming up because this is the first time we've ever imagined this kind of an option. It's something we have learned working with our customers over the last few years and seen the progress some of our early adopters and innovative customers have made by taking that disruptive approach to organizing their contact centers, challenging the notion that agents cannot answer all kinds of inquiries. And we believe that the new fulcrum, the new machine, if you will, that makes it all possible is the ability to apply knowledge and AI technologies in a usable way to guide all customer conversations for the agent. And that's not just for the agent. Agent is the starting point, but you can take that same capability and apply it in a easier to consume form in self-service as well. So the leverage is extremely high. To us, that's where the contact centers move over the next few years. Not just about better training, not just about better retention, not just about better routing. Yes, you have to do all that. But the part that will change the conversation for contact centers is if you assume that these agents can do everything. They can handle all the inquiries. Now I want to spend the next few minutes talking about how that actually becomes possible and how we think the industry will evolve and what are some of the things that you should keep in mind as you think about this new world, this super agent that we are now talking about. The super agent who can do all the tasks in the contact center because they have the ability to be guided by your knowledge in AI solutions. It's a liberating thought for the agent pool, for your team, because they don't have to go through the dreary training. Right? They can go in and out. They can have a gig economy lifestyle. They can do purposeful work. So going from a world where you are dealing with this very much a theory X kind of mindset of managing your contact center, which is really how management mostly in contact centers works, not everywhere, but in most places. We do see contact centers that focus on the agent experience to the point where they say, unless the agent is happy, the customer is not happy. But in order to make the agent happy, you can either just pay them a lot of money, which is fine, you can do that, or you can provide an environment where they can be successful, where they can do purposeful work. And to us, this is the place, the pivot that changes that conversation. So, if super agents is where we think we can get to, what are the technologies? And let's talk about the two, which are highly complementary, but let's spend some time talking about each one separately. We will first start with AI, and then we will go into knowledge and knowledge hubs. Now, knowledge, before I get into the AI part, let me just make a comment about knowledge, and Rick talked about that as well. Knowledge is not just content. Knowledge includes relevant content, includes know-how about your business. It includes insights, and it combines the best of AI, both optimization as well as conversation, both of those, to provide a humanized experience that the agent can use to solve customer inquiries. To me, that's what knowledge eventually looks like. Now, we've made great strides based on what we do and the industry does, but I think there's a lot of room for us to continue to grow in that space and make the whole knowledge consumption much easier, much more natural. Okay? So let's talk about the AI part of that first. Now, AI is a vast conversation. I'm not going to get into the bigger picture, but before I get into the specific area of AI for customer service, for contact centers, particularly around this notion that I talk about of agents answering all queries. Before I get into that, let's just take a broad survey and see some interesting observations there. So this is a survey that was done by McKinsey late last year, so it's less than a year old. And what they did was they asked the question, what sort of use cases are businesses solving today with AI technology? And what they found was that the number one area where, in terms of use cases, where AI was being applied successfully was in customer service. If you look at the top 5, you see that the first, the third, and the fifth are all customer service. Two things to observe from that. One, that the value of AI in customer service is showing up. It's providing the results, so people are really investing in it. And second, that customer service presents an environment where you can see the before and after benefits of technology very easily, because it's a highly measured environment. And the same applies to knowledge. So to me, knowledge and AI go hand in hand. And we see that all the time with some of our early innovative customers. And these are customers who have been with us for 5+ years, but they have been very early in their journey to challenge that notion of agents taking all contacts, all calls. That, once you hold on to that notion, then everything kind of converges into a much simpler world around that notion. Now, if you think of AI and ML, again, lots of technologies, very fast changing and fast evolving in the ecosystem, in the marketplace. And that means you have, as eGain, as a provider, or you as a business that is looking at AI and machine learning, have to be very mindful of staying on the cutting edge, or at least on the leading edge, and adopting strategies that allow you to stay nimble as the technologies underlying it get better and better. And I say this because that implies a certain way of thinking about your technology investments, your technology focus in AI as it relates to contact centers and customer service. Let me give you an example. There are 3 core capabilities that we see as critical to automating and optimizing these conversations in the contact center, assisting the agent to answer all queries. And these 3, I'm bucketing them into 3 categories because they are different and they're all moving at different rates. If you think about machine learning, it's a very active area right now. We all know that. But just to give you an example, right? 3 years ago, in the internet world, 3 years ago, the technologies used to understand search intent by Google, this is public knowledge, I'm sure some of you know this, was very much based on machine learning that was built on the idea of natural language understanding. So to try to understand the intent through algorithmic mechanisms, to break down the sentence, understand what each part of it means, build out that structure internally, and then try to derive that intent and try to answer the query. They did very well, better than anyone else. But 3 years ago, they switched to a new model of machine learning, which is a self-learning, unsupervised machine learning model. Now, this is all for the World Wide Web. I'm not talking about an immediate application to your business environment, but wait for a second, you'll see that impact. 3 years ago, they got to a point where they could learn without any supervision and without any labeling, so none of that CAPTCHA stuff that is taken out and then applied to learning, none of that labeling requirement. Self-attention, what's in the industry called self-attention in any document, just understanding the whole document as a whole was enough for the machine learning tool to figure out how to establish intent better than all the natural language understanding that was done before that. And so 3 years ago, they switched entirely on the English version of Google, their intent determination from that algorithmic labeled approach to this unlabeled, unsupervised learning model, which they open sourced called BERT. The reason I'm bringing up this story is that machine learning is nowhere close to being done. Right? There are lots of new technologies that are coming up in the world of both the ecosystem as well as open source. And it is really important for someone who is thinking about AI in contact centers and customer service to be mindful of that rate of change. Because you don't want to get locked necessarily into just one way of doing things. So keep that in mind. The second thing is reasoning. It's an area which, for the longest time, had very little traction in the market. For the longest time, people felt like it was too much work. Now, suddenly reasoning is becoming very important because it's okay to understand, which is what machine learning gives you an ability to recognize patterns, but then what do you do with it? How do you solve the problem? In customer service, that is very relevant because solving a problem is more than just recognizing a problem. So reasoning has gotten a lot of boost as a result of that. AI reasoning around case-based reasoning, which is an established technology, and you marry it with machine learning, you get some really powerful outcomes. And finally, knowledge-based, because ultimately you have to respond with an answer, a solution. And so having that ability to have personalized responses coming out of a knowledge base with intelligent search, with all the usual enterprise class capabilities built around it. So if you think of those 3 buckets, you bring those capabilities together. This might seem like a complex chart, and I don't want you to necessarily sweat the details on how it's organized, but the part that is relevant for you to understand is that all these 3 technologies are working together to deliver a virtual assistant experience. And that's where, if you think about technology and AI and how it is relevant for driving that all agents taking all contacts, you have to have an architecture and a capability of technology that allows you to plug and play. For instance, If you find a better engine, which is what I mentioned in the case of Google, the open source BERT, if there's a better engine to determine intent, you should be able to plug it in and out. That's the flexibility that you need to stay on the leading edge of AI automation as it relates to our goal of all agent, all calls. I'll give you another use case, another interesting one here. If you have a lot of curated knowledge that allows agents to handle and be guided by that knowledge and that AI to get to the right answer, perfect. But most companies don't start there. Most clients that we deal with, in fact, most clients we deal with, the best ones are the ones who have struggled with knowledge in the past, and then we end up being the ones they talk to say, well, can we do it any better? Because we do believe in knowledge, but we need to solve it better. This is a good example of an unsolved problem, typically. But we, as a company, have made some good headway, just learning from what's out in the market, bringing the right technologies together. For content which is not curated and turned into consumable knowledge yet. And most of you will agree that you have tons of that content today. So, for the 20% of the content which can be curated, you do that. But what about the remaining? Can you do better than just plain old search? That's an outstanding question. And so, what we have seen, for example, again, is bringing together an ensemble of techniques around AI. You can actually make a dent in that problem, which is quite exciting. And that's the value here of thinking nimble and composable in the AI capabilities that are available in the market. The example I'm giving you here brings together to get you the snippet of answer from a bunch of long document content that you may have, to bring you that snippet of answer based on one long search query, a question that was asked. That requires an interoperation, if you will, of traditional machine learning to determine intent, unsupervised learning with unlabeled information to figure out the best answers where there is no intent established, and reasoning to clarify intent if the intent is not determinable. All of that comes together to bring you the capability around what we call instant answers. Again, it's a use case that I'm highlighting because we believe that these are the sorts of AI applications that take you toward your goal of all agent, all contacts. And the way to do it is to not be technology parochial, if I may use the word, not be focused on one thing, but be more secular in that, right? Look at it agnostically and have an architecture where you can plug and play with these different capabilities. The last thought I want to leave you with around AI and machine learning is that it is not fit and forget. You cannot expect to have just one technology work for you for the next 5 years. Chances are, whatever capabilities you put together, every couple of years you will be adjusting it. And that's something that you need to be working with or developing, either internally or with our partner, the ability to plug and play easily. And that's how we believe AI automation will be most effective toward the goal that we are trying to drive to. So that kind of takes me into the third bucket of conversation, which is around knowledge hubs. And how do we use knowledge hubs to drive that goal of all agents, all contacts? So let's take a look. The first thing that I want to bring out is that it's not something that will happen in the future. It's not something that is still being seen as what if that were possible. This is something that's happening today, but not happening broadly across the market. So there is a clear early adopter segment that has seen tremendously transformative impact with the right sort of knowledge solutions in their business, in their contact centers. And this is coming not just from us and other people who are purveyors of knowledge technology, but also from Gartner. And their view that this was in calendar 2022, they believe that knowledge management is the #1 technology. That's a big call, big statement to make for customer service and contact centers. And we have seen the same with our customers and give you some stories. Right? How big is that impact? Right? Let's chew on this a little bit. I'll tell you the story. This is a large business, a telco, where they came to us over 5 years ago, and the question that they were asking, which is the right question, not framed as all agent, all contacts, but the question was, in their contact centers, which had more than 10,000 agents, the question was, they see a tremendous variability of agent performance across their organization. That was the challenge. And their hypothesis was, or what they wanted to test, was, is it about the agents, the people we are hiring and training? Is it people specific? Or is it process? Where are we failing? Or is it both? We want to understand that and see how to solve it. And clearly they had a bias they were trying to get to a point where it would be less people dependent and more process dependent and more know-how dependent. And that's exactly where they ended up working with our technology and building that. Across 10,000 plus agents, this solution, once implemented, and it took about 18 months to get up to that scale, they tested it and they published this data. 35% improvement in FCR, went from 62% to 85%. That's 23% on 62, which is where you get the 35, right? For those of you who do math easy, for 10,000 agents, that's a lot of money saved. In fact, it was so impactful for them that they had this strategy before because the cost of care was getting really out of hand, so they had outsourced and offshored a lot of their contact center operations. Because of the money they started to save, they managed to onshore back. And they built a case for it, saying, if we go with this model and use knowledge as the tool, which internally they had every agent use it, so the adoption was, and the usage was over 90%, that they could get to a cost-effective model onshore. So imagine the impact. It's a business model change almost, because you're able to save so much by creating this guided solution. 25 points increase in NPS attributed to this solution. I'm sure those of you who do NPS know that that's a big jump attributed to this solution. Incidentally, their total NPS improvement was more than 25, it was more like 45 points or so over that period, A/B test. The part that would be most exciting, though, in this environment is time to competence down by 50%. Because agents don't need to be trained on product and process. They just need to be trained on the tool. And once you have that culture, that habit in the organization, then you realize that you don't even have to retrain. You don't have to bring people out for 2 hours to train them on the next thing that came up, a product change or whatever else. Everything is coming in through that guided experience of the knowledge in AI solution. And time to competence goes up as a result of that. So this is the scale of impact, and it's not just for a huge contact center. This other client that we worked with, and they still, both of them, continue to work with us. This client, they had less than 1,000 agents. They had like 800 odd agents at the time when we got in. It was about 4 years ago. And they were really struggling with growth at that time. This was pre-pandemic. But the challenge they had was the same because they were growing extremely quickly. And so they didn't have time to hire and train, and they were struggling with all the challenges because of that. Once they implemented the knowledge and AI solution, their agent confidence, which is something they really track carefully, because to them, a confident agent that delivers the right answer is the way to get better customer experience. And so the improvement there was very significant. 60% improvement in agent confidence, 30% improvement in the quality of the answer. And now, since then, this client has rolled out not just the knowledge into the contact center, which is universally used, but also on the self-service side as well as into their product. So it's embedded into their product, right? So preemptive service. Where I'm headed with this is when you start with a knowledge solution in the agent environment in the contact center. That's the first base of value that you get. And then the knowledge can be leveraged to the next self-service, running it to the next base, and so on and so forth. So what I talked about, the first-class lever that you're able to create out of this knowledge solution is very, very valuable for the entire enterprise over time. Now, one thing we always want to question ourselves, is it knowledge hubs are only relevant for contact centers, or do they work other places as well? One thing that you have to keep in mind is that the contact centers are highly measured, highly structured, and therefore the A/B tests are a lot easier because all the systems of measurement are in place. Plus, there's a lot of people in one place, virtually at least, so the impact can be multiplied quite easily. That makes a case for starting with knowledge in the contact center. So that's an important thing as you're thinking about investment strategies and priorities in your organization. When you're talking to your CXOs, why should we start with knowledge here? Why not somewhere else? Service is a natural place where you can show hard ROI savings, not just the CX improvements, but also the dollar savings. And then the other question that people do come up with, which is a fair question, which says, yeah, we've heard about knowledge management for a while, so what's so special about it now? It's a fair question. But what you have to think about is, AI was in the same place a few years ago. I'm sure those of you who've been around, I've been, AI was a bad word in late 90s and early 2000s. We've been doing AI for a while, and when you talk to people about AI, they would actually just shut down, because to them, AI was failure, because they had tried it out in the 80s, just like knowledge was. Knowledge was tried out in the 80s. The difference this time around, and very much parallel to AI, is that technologies have improved. The understanding of where and how to apply the technology has gotten much sharper. You don't just go and do it for the entire enterprise in a huge lift and end up with not being able to show quantifiable benefits. So by sharpening the focus and the tools, and of course the market need keeps getting more and more acute. So all three put together have made knowledge now very, very attractive as a technology that you can pursue and you can get quantifiable ROI from. So that's, to me, the way we think about it. In the customer service area, knowledge is where, our view, where contact centers were 50 years ago, where CRM technologies in the customer service arena were 25 years ago. And the snowball effect of, this is the way to solve the right problem, which is all agent, all contacts. And we think that that's what's happening now. Gartner says that, we see it with our customers, and we believe that this is the way you can change the trajectory of your customer care organization in the next few years. So let's talk a little specific about knowledge hubs, because I want to make sure you have at least a high-level view of what we mean by knowledge hubs and a little detail here. So we've listed 10 items that we believe knowledge hubs must have as capabilities in order for them to be effective. Now that seems like a long list. You might say, well, do I really need to do all 10? Can I not do a few of them? Will it not give me value? It's interesting. There's a lot of literature out there now around knowledge management. The modern version, I'm talking about the last couple of years, especially around customer service. And all of it points to the fact that unless you bring these capabilities together and easily, working well, you don't get the full impact of it. So I'll take an example. Let's say that you had this knowledge hub and you did not have, just start with the first one. You did not have an outside-in view of designing the experience. So there were portals, nice portals. And we have seen this, by the way, many a times with our customers. That's why I'm starting with that example. So we go in, the customer says, yeah, we've tried knowledge, doesn't quite work. So, okay, let's show us your current knowledge implementation. You look at the knowledge implementation, and you wonder why anyone would ever use it. Because it's just not very attractive. It doesn't seem like it's inviting you. It doesn't have a lot of components that I'm listing out here as required. So it looks flat, gives you a bunch of search results, and therefore adoption is, single digits. And so it's a vicious cycle. What we have seen with knowledge, and this is kind of important for us to think about, as an agent, I don't have to use knowledge. I can kind of guess my way through it. And this, in fact, is both a challenge and opportunity, and you'll see some of the pieces we are showing in our demo lounge. You'll see how we solve that problem. It's sort of a second-order problem, but if I don't have to use a capability, then it better be really, really attractive and easy to use, easy to consume for me to go in and do it, right? To engage with that solution. So that outside-in designed experience is vital. It's not just a viable solution saying, I got a portal with knowledge on it, and that's the answer. In fact, I would bet that half the organizations in customer care and contact centers have some sort of knowledge. But you ask them how valuable and how effective it is, they don't know. That's what we mean by the difference between the designed outside-in perspective versus just put it out there and hope something works. If you think about knowledge-based consolidation, that's pretty obvious. If you do not consolidate all your knowledge in one place, guess what? No one's going to go into 3 places to try to find the right knowledge. And so the absence of any one of these capabilities ends up handicapping the experience for the agent, dropping adoption down to a subcritical level. And that's what we mean by the comprehensive nature of technology that's available now. Of course, nothing is perfect, but they're all at a point where you bring it all together, the agent adoption goes up because it's a wow experience. It's a wow experience for the agent. They feel like using it because this is making their life easier. And the other part that is also very attractive is, as I mentioned earlier, once you've built that knowledge, this is a little bit of detail, but I want to focus on the part that is relevant here. You look at the pieces on the right side of the yellow circle, right? That's what the excitement is. Once you've built out that knowledge in the hub, you can publish it out across the organization, not just in the agent environment, not just in the contact center. And if you have the right personalization, which is what is one of the 10 pieces that you need in the Knowledge Hub, you can publish confidently into your partners, into your end customers, into your product, in a lot of cases, because there's a lot of digital products out there that people are selling. All of us have digital product variations or versions. So those apps, you can embed your knowledge in that. So suddenly the value of that investment just explodes. And to us, that's the most exciting thing about knowledge. It's build once, invest once, and then you can use it everywhere. So let me just take a quick kind of summary of where we are. We started out with what's the current state of play with contact centers? What we think are the pain points and the convergence of challenges that there is a sort of untenable situation around the agent experience. And that's evident by the fact that attrition's going up and recruitment is challenging. We can keep going the route of let's just do more of what we're doing, or we can take a step back and we can revisit the notion of this imperfect agent, the agent who cannot necessarily handle all contacts at the same time. We apply the techniques of knowledge and AI. We believe that solves the problem well. We believe that has been done by many of our early adopter customers. And we know that it's not just the investment you make for the contact center. Once you do the knowledge and AI for the contact center, you can take that same know-how in that knowledge hub and leverage it across your entire organization. Self-service, product embedding, and so on and so forth. That's where we are. Now, let's talk a little bit about life outside the contact center. Because, like I said, the knowledge that you are building is going to be valuable across the organization, not just in the contact center. And so let's talk about that. We see the future of knowledge starting out, let's say, in the contact center, but this knowledge hub that can be used not just in service, but also in other functions. Right? Sales is a great place where we are seeing now, we as eGain are seeing demand for knowledge for sales, because the challenge is similar. When you're hiring a lot of sales staff, or you've got a big branch organization and you have branch staff, you're hiring some relatively young people. They're starting their careers, and you're giving them the opportunity to sell these complex products. Let's say banking is a good example. How many of the bankers who are hired and trained and put on in front of the customer can really do a need-based assessment? Rick talked about US Bank, and I'm sure they've done great training for bankers, but I would contend that if instead of all the time and investment in training, you could take that and some of it, maybe half of it, turn it into guidance, which could be used by these new bankers, the effect would be, in my opinion, more impactful, right? So knowledge for sales is a very interesting area. We are seeing customers pulling in that, and we think there's an opportunity and need in that organization. If you go to the left, or the other side, to the right, you see that the organization itself, especially around learning and development, is a natural complement to knowledge for service. So the same know-how that you are putting in front of the agent to resolve these questions and inquiries can and should be part of the learning and development set that comes in, so that there's no discontinuity between training, which is you just listen to all this stuff, retain as much as you can, pass a few tests, and then you come into the contact center and lo and behold, it's totally different. So integrating that makes a lot of sense. Creating the same knowledge, the same guidance, and training people on using the tools rather than remembering all that know-how. And then further and further across the organization. You get the point. The other thing that's interesting with knowledge hubs for the whole business is that it's not just the front line that needs to use knowledge. So let's imagine a knowledge hub for a business. It's more than just curated knowledge, the trusted knowledge, the first thing that is mentioned there. That is clearly the part that is used by frontline staff or by end customers, because this knowledge has to be trusted, it has to be consumable, it has to be curated for the most part. But now you dip into the documented knowledge, which is much bigger repository in the organization. This is content which is not necessarily built out customer facing, but is correct. So large documents, like I talked about the instant answers example, where you can tap into the long documents and get the relevant snippets and present it in front of the agent. That sort of developed documented knowledge is something that becomes bigger and bigger in a business knowledge hub environment. And the reason I'm bringing it up is that in order to use it effectively, many times you need the experts to add color, to explain how to use it. Right? So there is a flow of knowledge all the way from the groundswell of developing all the knowledge, which is where the active collaboration and content is, to the documented knowledge, which is correct but not curated and not consumable, all the way to trusted, which is now meant for end customer and end agent frontline use. That's a pipeline, if you will, and there's a loop back with feedback. To me, this is the next kind of opportunity for your organizations beyond the knowledge for customer service and knowledge for sales. Beyond that is looking at knowledge hub, which also intersects with a knowledge graph, which is who are the people in your organization who know certain areas well? Who are the experts? Who have the skills? Who are the trusted knowledge providers and knowledge creators in the organization? Intersecting those two things, right? The knowledge hub, which has all the knowledge, and the knowledge graph, which has information about who has that knowledge, who are the people who are creating that knowledge. If you intersect the two, you get a knowledge hub for the entire business now, which is self-improving because you've got experts who are providing the development of the knowledge, and then there are curators who are turning it into trusted knowledge. Now, this is not something that is very popular today, but we believe this is the direction the industry is headed to. And there are early adopters, and we are working with a few who are interested in looking at how do we marry knowledge graphs with knowledge hubs. I'm sure many of your businesses are internally building out knowledge graphs around skills, around competency, around know-how. So we would love to partner with some of you who have that interest to see how we can marry our knowledge hub technology with that knowledge graph that you have within your organization. And the last observation I'll make is that in order to manage and maintain and keep that knowledge relevant, internal enterprise experts, these are not frontline agents or knowledge managers. We're talking about people who are product builders or go-to-market strategists or leaders who are deciding what products and how to solve and which markets to get into. We're now talking about the core of the organization, the senior groups in the organization. They now need to be connected into this knowledge system because they need to provide the know-how and input which ultimately feeds, and they need to learn from this knowledge hub as to what is being sold and serviced by the organization. And if you think of that internal enterprise team, how they need to be now able to do this on a regular basis with SLAs, with escalations, guess what that internal organization starts to look like? I'm not talking about the contact center, but the inside of the company. To us, it starts looking like a contact center. So not just the outside, but also the inside, because it's organized. It's all dependent on a knowledge hub. People are feeding knowledge into it, curating it, everyone's using it, and the fact that everyone's using and providing feedback makes the knowledge better. And so we believe that over time, businesses will increasingly look like a very large, hierarchically organized contact center. So that's our view of the world a few years from now. We hope you are in this journey with us and look forward to working with all of you and partnering with you. And thank